The 2024 Pokemon TCG World Championships are just around the corner, and Shrouded Fable has finally arrived to Pokemon TCG Live, and with it, the online tournament scene over at Limitless TCG has been buzzing with activity and daily tournaments. There was also a live tournament held in Japan featuring a lot of high-profile players such as Keito Arai, Torque Reklev, Takuya Yoneda, and others, which, being this close to Worlds, helps provide more insight and data of the potential metagame and developing trends in the lead up to Worlds. These past couple of weeks analyzing the results have definitely reinforced a lot of my thoughts regarding the metagame and the best decks, but also changed my mind on others. A couple of weeks ago, I posted my personal tier list as we head into the World Championships with what I've found so far in terms of decks and their perceived power level. Now that we have a bit more data and also I continue to test, I do think there are a few shifts to be made, and so in this video I will go over the relevant changes and how things have shifted. First off, let's go over the changes in the C tier. Coltengo EX, Dialga V-Star, Roaring Moon EX, and Giratina V-Star remain there. When it comes to competing with the better, more powerful decks, they all have very glaring weaknesses that are hard to overcome and thus hold them back from placing any higher. Coltengo EX has frail 50 to 60 HP basic Pokemon that are primed for Regidrago V-Star decks to pick up using Dragapult EX's Phantom Dive, as well as having issues consistently discarding 6 back-to-back turns and dealing with Radiant Charizard one-hit KOs as well. Dialga V-Star suffers the same fate. Even if Beldums have 70 HP and avoid immediate KO by Phantom Dive, Metangs only have 100 HP, so that damage will build up. While Star Chrono's comeback potential should not be underestimated, being weak to Radiant Charizard continues to be a problem for the deck. Roaring Moon EX decks have all the potentials in the world, but the self-inflicted damage from Frenzied Gouging leaves it too vulnerable to be return KO'd, and the threat of Phantom Dive remains to where your opponent can get 4 prize turns in exchange when you use it. Of course, both Ancient Booster Energy Capsule and Emergency Jelly help fix this, but there's no easy way to guarantee those cards, and being weak to grass in a metagame where Ogerpon is ever present is just a bad deal overall. Finally, Giratina V-Star is on its last legs for sure. Between the existence of Kyurem and Regidrago V-Star being simply a better Dragon type card that can use Giratina V-Star's Lost Impact itself, there's very few reasons to play this deck at all. Joining the C tier now is Lost Box, which, while still has a bit power behind it, but suffers from the same issues as Giratina V-Star with Kyurem and Dusknoir being around. The threatening combo of Hawlucha and Phantom Dive to dismantle the bench, and no easy way to deal with the high HP of Regidrago V-Star or Charizard EX. And rounding out the C tier is Chien-Pao EX, which is once again dismantled by the wide array of attacks that Regidrago V-Star can utilize, and under normal circumstances, the deck just has trouble keeping up with that and other top tier decks. This tier is almost purely defined by all these decks' inability to keep up with the best deck in the format, Regidrago V-Star. However, decks in the B tier have a better chance against it, and that includes the 2 newcomers from the C tier, Iron Thorns EX and Miraidon EX. Iron Thorns EX's initialization ability shutting down other rulebox Pokemon is amazing, and since it's the only Pokemon you play, your opponent will never have a chance to not have to deal with it. Shutting down Squawkabill EX, Steelmask Ogerpon EX, Pidgeot EX, Rotom V, Luminion V, Regidrago V-Star, Lugia V-Star, and Gardevoir EX brings a lot of the top tier decks to a halt. And while there are many good non-rulebox Pokemon abilities in the metagame, they're having trouble keeping up with Regidrago V-Star's dominance. The reasons that are keeping Iron Thorns EX at bay are its low-ish damage output, as well as key counters like Canceling Cologne being common in Regidrago and Charizard decks, as well as Fluttermane and Klefki in Gardevoir EX decks. Miraidon EX on the other hand is continuing to do its thing, becoming a more versatile deck with new inclusions such as Blood Moon or Saluna EX, and relying on the variants of Electric Generator to pull through for it. When it does though, the deck's high speed is quite crucial to deal with many decks before they get a chance to get going. With weakness advantage against Lugia V-Star, Iron Hands EX threats against Gardevoir EX, and speed advantage against Regidrago V-Star, it's poised to do okay, yet the Charizard EX matchup is always an issue for it no matter what. Ancient Box has seen more success than I initially expected it to have, and it has even dedicated spots to both Pecharunt EX and Fizandipit EX to have switching outs as well as backup draw and recovery against its biggest enemy in hand disruption. If Charizard EX is not going to be the extreme powerhouse it could be due to Regidrago V-Star, then this deck can potentially shine a bit more. Next, Pidgeot Control thrives in a well-established metagame because they have a clearer path on what to counter. However, I don't think that path is quite set just yet, and Lugia V-Star continues to be a headache for them to deal with, and that deck is certainly making strides and cementing itself at the very top, which is why I think it remains in the B tier. And finally, we get to Dragapult TX, which gets bumped down from the A tier to B tier. The deck is powerful and good, but unlike Charizard, where once you set up your stage 2, you are good to go thanks to your ability, Dragapult needs to also worry about finding the right energy, which sometimes sets it back a crucial turn in a very fast-paced metagame. And while Mela, Xatu, and Neo Upper Energy try to cover for that, it just hasn't been good enough. And Regidrago V-Star is just a better Dragapult EX deck overall at the moment. I'm now of the idea that until Regidrago V-Star rotates next year, Dragapult EX will likely never be able to outshine it at all. And thus, we arrive at the A tier, which sees some significant changes with the drop of Dragapult EX to B tier, but more importantly, the rise of Snorlax decks.
If you have enjoyed the video so far and found the information useful, please consider becoming a tablemon channel member through the join button down below. For as low as $1.99 a month, you can help support the creation of these videos.
When I initially tried out Snorlax in the Shrouded Fable format, I based my list off of Japanese results and NAIC lists, but it seems like cards like Dusknoir and Canceling Cologne, being included in Regidrago V-Star, has forced a different approach for the deck based on crushing hammers and handheld fan in order to deny energy as one of its main ways to disrupt. Whilst Charizard EX gained Dusknoir to deal with this deck, you can play 2 Cornerstone Ogre Bunny EX in order to counter that, as they can deal with one but the second is very difficult. Those 2 adaptations led to a very successful comeback of Snorlax onto the scene in these initial stages. But when there is such a big light shining onto Snorlax and how scary it is, that's when people are most likely to counter it. How well this deck does at the World Championships this weekend almost entirely depends on how much people actually respect the deck and account for it in their list with various attacks. A new face to the A tier is Charizard EX. Now don't get me wrong, the deck feels incredible to me with Dusknoir, and the Pecharunt EX Binding Mochi combo gives the deck a nice oomph in damage output. There has been a big debate online regarding which version is better, and I personally really like the Dusknoir variant. However, regardless of which one you prefer, the biggest hurdle is Regidrago V-Star still. The deck can go toe to toe with it, but most of the time, it will be doing so without Pidgeot EX, which makes finding the right cards at the right time or simply establishing back-to-back Charizard EXs a difficult task. That matchup, along with Lugia V-Star's rise in the ranks, means Charizard EX had to take a hit. Not to mention the potentially troublesome Snorlax matchup with double Cornerstone Ogre Bunny EXs, and thus needing to tech Canceling Cologne to have a fighting chance. I've seen many people disregarding this deck though, and I think it's a big mistake to underestimate it. The final tier A deck is Raging Bolt EX, a very fast and straightforward deck that adds Fezandipity EX for extra protection against Unfirst Stamp and Iono, which run rampant in the format, and are the only thing standing in its way of using Professor Say's Vitality every turn possible. The deck has a good matchup against a lot of the top decks thanks to its speed, simplicity, and the multiple ghosting effects to pressure important or key Pokemon since the very first turn. Its worst matchups tend to be Gardevoir EX and Charizard EX, but the major selling point is its really good Regidrago V-Star matchup. However, Raging Bolt EX's simplicity could be its best tool for success at the World Championships. And thus, we arrive at the S tier, which includes 3 decks now as opposed to 2, with Gardevoir EX and Lugia V-Star joining Regidrago V-Star at the very top. Gardevoir EX's rise to the top is just purely out of playing with it more and seeing how resilient it is and how it can produce masterful comebacks consistently. The deck had fantastic attackers. Monkey Dory makes Gardevoir EX a more resilient threat by healing the self damage, using that to increase the damage output and taking advantage of the lack of dark type threats other than Charizard EX. Gardevoir EX with Professor Arturo scenario is actually a very hard combination to overcome for a lot of decks, especially Regidrago V-Star, which use Giratina V-Star over Raging Bolt EX as they can never one-hit KO it. Between its adaptability, disruption, and fantastic single prize attackers, Gardevoir EX has what it takes to overcome any obstacle, despite all the playable new cards from Shrouded Fable affecting it negatively in some way. Dusknoir, Dusclops, and Kyurem are major threats to it, and Fezandipity EX works against the heavy disruption the deck uses to produce comebacks. Moving on to Lugia V-Star, this deck's biggest struggle seems to be discarding Archeops, but if it does it fast enough to keep up with an opponent, it feels like the best and most versatile deck. Cinccino is the real star of the show, As in this metagame where most decks are trying to take 2 prizes over the course of 3 consecutive turns, Cinccino gives that option to Lugia V-Star decks, but also prevents other decks from doing so. Cinccino combined with Iron Hands EX on top of Legacy Energy makes trying to deal with the deck very difficult. This combination of factors lets Lugia V-Star stand tall as a tier S deck that is really well poised to have a deep run at Worlds, as long as you can consistently discard those pesky Archeops. And as expected, all roads lead to the star of the show and public enemy number 1 at the 2024 World Championships, Regidrago V-Star. Shrouded Fable brought 2 key cards to an already powerful deck in Kyurem and Fezandipity X, and the deck already boasted a resilient and versatile attacker with no weakness, great support Pokemon with a powerful secondary typing, and great answers to control or stall decks with Switch, Canceling Cologne, and Prime Catcher already included naturally in the deck, alongside the possibility to reuse them at any given moment thanks to Legacy Star. This deck really feels like it has it all, and despite it taking almost 2 years for Regidrago V-Star to reach its full potential, I don't think anyone would be surprised if this deck took home the coveted Golden Pikachu Trophy and the highest honors this coming weekend. This should cover how I think the metagame has shifted since the official release of Shrouded Fable over on our side of the world, and how things are quickly developing in the lead up to Worlds. Despite the fact that I will be commentating this World Championship instead of participating, I have still practiced and honed my skills all summer, both to help the people that I personally coach and also to make sure I provide good and insightful commentary and analysis, so I hope you will tune in and enjoy the show. Regardless of who or what deck wins, we are guaranteed to see some amazing matches between the best Pokemon TCG players in the world. I hope this video has been useful for you. And whether you're heading to Worlds or not, I'd love to know what deck you think will win the 2024 World Championships.
If you
Thanks
want to
for
support
watching,
the channel,
and
you
until
can
next
use
time.
code TABLEMon to get 5% off at Potent Store for your online codes, 10% off for your sealed product at Flipside Gaming, and 10% off on your aluminum accessories at TC Evolutions. Or if you're looking to buy singles or sleeves, you can fill up your cart and close the tab, then click on the affiliate link in the description and check out. That way you can support the channel over at TCG Player, Card Market, and Dragon Shield. ¿Eres de México y necesitas cartas de Pokémon? Busca Hyperbeam Cards en Facebook e Instagram. Y si estás en Tijuana, búscalos en el local C27 en el Centro Comercial Otay.